Welcome to Focused on Forward. The purpose of this podcast is to focus on recovery from life situations, be it a disease, chronic or acute, perhaps the loss of someone so dear to you in death, or a change of life patterns that has affected you so profoundly that you have no choice but to find your new normal and become focused on moving forward. Each episode is designed to show the positivity that people bring to each and every one of their stories, the successes they've had, ways that they have become so definitively focused on moving forward. We look forward to sharing their stories, and we hope that they inspire you just as much as they have inspired us. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Focused on Forward. Today we have the pleasure of talking with Mark Halberg, who's joined by his good friend and co-host of a podcast called the Fandom Effect. His co-host goes by the name of Devon McVettie. So Mark, Devon, thank you for joining us today. Glad to have you both here.
Glad to be here, Tim.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah. So Mark, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk primarily about the story of your life, the things that you're working on overcoming and the challenges that you faced. And Devon's here to kind of help us round out some of the stories and details as far as it regards to him and things. So our audience is anxious to hear, Mark, your story and how you are overcoming the challenges that you faced in your life. So please, anytime you're ready, go ahead and talk to us.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff of overcoming is going to come after my son was born a couple years ago. And like you said earlier, we were talking off the air for potentially upcoming legal things. There's some things that I can't go into too much depth about. But it started off normal. Like growing up, no major issues. Just kind of like you go up a nerd. Sometimes you struggle to find those friends that are into the same things you are. So early on, it was a lot of just like me finding friends that like were the opposite of nerdy guys, but were people that were cool and I could hang out with, just because there was no, up until high school, there was no really like friends that I had that were, overly nerdy in any way. So it was, it's lonely, when you're like, when it's like that, when you don't have a lot of people that are into the same things, you're not really sure where to go in a direction. And so I floundered for a while, even through college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And, I always felt like I was a smart guy, but didn't really know, where to go. And part of that is now the problem today. I'm 31 and trying to find like a new career path, and try to find a struggle. And it kind of goes back to stemming from not having a good plan early on, and kind of like trying to juggle around. And a lot of the big stuff, like I said, is more recent stuff. My son was born pretty unexpectedly. He was a surprise with me and my ex, and then that's exploded. And Devon knows this stuff fairly well, but in any way it could explode badly, it's exploded badly. There was some mistakes on my part a year ago, like nothing like crazy sinister, but just mistakes. And we tried like, working through stuff, and then she kind of did lots of other, like I said, I can't go into crazy details, but
yeah. So anything legal, we don't need to go into. Let's keep you on the legal side of not getting in trouble.
Yeah. But yeah, so then, a lot of issues kind of arisen from there that have become things to overcome. So besides just the stuff about job stuff in general, with her, randomly also out of the blue one day, a couple months ago, was like, yeah, I don't love you anymore. I'm done. Essentially I've already found somebody else. And it was like 2 weeks later, off and going on trips with this guy. She was, you can read between the lines of what happened.
That's a pretty quick change.
Yeah. And so now it's transitioned into, I had a job offer recently. And so all this stuff in terms of like overcoming it caused, I never really had, major issues with like anxiety or stuff before. Obviously everyone has their own issues to that extent. You can probably hear my son, but it's all this stuff happening has caused,
no worries.
Has caused it to now be like a prevalent issue to need to overcome, where, simple things like getting a good job offer that I had through Quicken, where it was a lot more money and it was a remote job, but it was 55 hours a week. I had to work every Sunday. and I was all set to start, and then literally had 3 days of straight panic attacks where I got 2 hours of sleep in 3 days and bailed on the job at the last second to stay where I'm at because I couldn't get through the process of maybe starting a new job and having to figure out, how am I going to watch him until 10 p.m. When it's my turn to watch him, how do I keep him occupied when I'm on the phone that much? And realistically, I've been able to, for people listening, to overcome, like, through therapy and being able to try to get a better handle on anxiety. I now realize, like, I probably would have been able to figure it out. Like, I could have made it work because
Yeah, but if you're dealing with anxiety in the moment, and being a person who deals with anxiety issues, I take wonderful doses of medicine for that to help me. But dealing with anxiety, and my wife deals with anxiety. One of my daughter deals with anxiety. It doesn't matter that it's that you could overcome it. It's what your mind tells you in the moment.
Right.
That's a pretty steep hurdle sometimes for us to overcome.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it was. Like, pretty much exactly what my therapist said after. He was like, "Yep, you let your anxiety get the better of you and bailed on a potential job." Because he was like, you were complacent where you're at because your job's so easy that you don't really have to do a whole lot. And you panicked over everything else. And, obviously, like, for people listening, like, looking back, like, I wish I could go back and have a better handle on things to take the job and just figure out the rest of it, figure out how to make the hours work. And yeah, it would have sucked working that many hours. And a lot of the issue too was I was all set to start. And this, to people listening, this comes to, like, when you're dealing with major anxiety issues, like, a minor change can throw your whole thing out the window. It was 3 days before my start date, and they called me and said, "Oh, hey, by the way, after you're here for a month, we're lowering your starting pay from 20 an hour to 15, but you'll make more commission." And like, up till that point, I was all set to start. I had put in my 2 weeks at my job. I was all set to go. And then they called me, and Devon knows how these conversations went. He can probably chime in if he wants, but it was like, I was all set. I was ready just to deal with it. And then they called me, and that's it. It was a simple change of, you'll make more commission, but we're lowering your starting pay. And that just caused a 3-day spiral where I couldn't get my feet on the ground.
So was it more of an issue of not having the unknown, or was it the what ifs? Because sometimes, I mean, those are closely adjacent items, but they're also very different. Because the unknown is this big nebulous out there that you can't quite put a finger on what it's going to be. And then there's the what ifs, where you can kind of see where this might go, but what if it doesn't do this? What if it doesn't do that?
Yeah, and it was a lot of the what ifs. Like, Devin knows the company. Like, there was a lot of potential for moving into something down the road, but that moving into something down the road that was more what I wanted to do meant going back to Michigan. And at the time, and I really still don't know if going back to Michigan is the thing, and I'll get into some stuff about why in a second, and about how you try to overcome things like this when it happens. But it was a lot of the what ifs. It was like, well, yeah, I'll make more money from the commission now, but now the base pay is lower than what I'm making now. So what if they get rid of the mandatory overtime? What happens if I have a bad month? Now I'm not going to make more money, or if I do, it's not going to be as much as I thought, but I'm still working all those hours. And I know I was good at sales, so, like, I knew I could have done well, but it was all these issues caused all that doubt. And it became so much. I mean, legitimately, I'm a gamer, so I've had LAN parties where I've played games over 3-4 days and not slept and did nothing but eat pizza and drink Coke and stuff. But I was at such a stress fueled anxiety attack for so long, like for so many days in a row, that I couldn't eat. I mean, I couldn't even, like, when people were, I was trying to get advice, and this is probably what my advice would be, is limit your advice to, like, a select group of, like, 5 or 6 people. Cause I was calling everybody I could to try to get advice. Like a dozen or more people, because I was so lost and so anxiety ridden, and I didn't know how to, I don't take medication right now. He hasn't, advised it yet, just serotonin. Cause I don't sleep. Like, even still today, I can't bring myself to go to sleep before 2 a.m. no matter what I do. My mind won't calm down until
Yeah,
2 a.m.
I understand that. I can sympathize, I think is the word I'm looking for. I
Yeah.
can sympathize with that. And that's where I am most nights as well.
Yeah. And Devin knows, so now, with some decisions I got going on right now, I'm kind of in a
I mean, the biggest thing is I have to say is Mark at that point when he was trying to make his decision, we both worked for the company prior. That's actually how we met. And so he turned almost into like the drowning aspect of like where you feel like you're drowning so instantly you have to panic to try to get out of the water or get out of the ice when really you need to calm down and then work your way out of the ice. And like he was saying, there was a lot of people whose input he seeked out, and naturally that's a given thing too. And you just every once in a while you need to keep it to a small basis and see with the people who really are there for your best interest at heart.
Yeah. And so now I'm talking to Devin, trying to talk to my parents, which is a different thing, and like two or three other people at most. People that I know will just give general opinions. And again, for people listening, I mean, like, I know how it is when people are listening to this and stuff gets ahead of you. Go get the milk. Like, the only reason why, honestly, like, and I'm okay saying this, that I'm not currently, because I just spent the last hour off and on, like, just Devin knows, I had 2 breakdowns in the last hour of, Cameron being a 3-year-old, just, not, I don't want to eat dinner. I don't want to do this. And, I don't want to do that. And yeah. And it, caused me to have like a full on breakdown twice in the last hour where I just sat there crying because I just was like, I didn't know what to do. And for people listening, it's, because a lot of times you feel like you're on your own. Right now I'm in a similar situation where I have another job offer for an IT help desk job in Michigan, and did what you do when when you're going with my situation of like, you obviously have joint custody of somebody. I did the things that I thought were the right thing. I asked her if it was a possibility, looked into my parents to see if I could, even though at 31 I don't want to, move it home for a little bit so I can try to save up money, get my feet under me. And everybody was like, nope. Parents were like, nope, we're retired. We want to enjoy it. We don't want you here. I mean, they said it nicer than that, but I mean, that's essentially
that was
what it
was. The gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah. She said maybe. So I looked into it and I got a plan in place. Like, got daycare quotes. Like, I got everything prepped, and, realizing that like, you gotta, cause that's the thing about trying to move forward and think ahead is, it's like, okay, before I wouldn't have done all this, and when she was like, well, I don't know, I probably won't let you take them, but you don't even have a plan in place. And that's like, before, it's like, that might've made you spiral, but now you're kind of like, okay, you know what? Even though we don't get along, they're right. This is something that I need to, have more of a plan in place before I make any decision. So if I make that decision, with my now anxiety issues, because that's also a lot of it too, is when you're dealing with all this stuff, you can't do as much off the seat flying as you used to, because, you get too much anxiety from it. There's too much pressure. So that was something else I've realized, is that I have to take a step back and do the work. So I did the work. And then again, without going into all the details, she exploded, like, no, you're not taking, you're on your own. It's, all the things, like I said, without going into the details that could go wrong in that situation, in terms of that kind of conversation,
Have inevitably gone wrong.
have gone wrong. And, so now it's, you try to juggle, how do you juggle everything when it feels like everyone's working against you? You can't go back home. If you do go back, and like Devin said, it's like Devin's been trying to tell me, it is a good opportunity. It's a potential career change, but the issue is the cost of moving is so expensive, and the job pay increase is not like astronomical. It's only like, a couple extra $100 a month, that with what she's demanding in terms of money and what I would have to pay to move, you find this weird balance of like, at what point does your own sanity surpass, even though, obviously he matters to me more than anything. At what point do you kind of like try to juggle, like, what point does your own mental health kick in? That's something that for people out there that are trying to move forward and stuff, is like it's weird trying to find that weird breaking point, because you feel like, a bad father or a bad parent when you're considering taking a job that would take you away where you're only going to see them, for breaks or for summer vacation, because, the job market in this immediate area is not good. It would be very hard for me to find. And a lot of it's because, like I said, I got so burnt out being in sales for so long that the last sales job that I had when we first moved here, it was with a good company and the pay was really good. But after like a couple months, I was showing up to work late. I couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone. I was just so done with being in sales, even though I had Cameron to support, because you get in your own head that I was like, well, I'll always have C, so I can afford to slack off. I don't need to figure out why I'm struggling so hard in sales, because I have a system in place to support me. And now it's like you look back and you're like, Jesus, if I had just tried harder at that job and all this still happened, I'd be in a better place to handle it.
But that's also one of the traps of anxiety too, is
right.
Looking back at what would have, could have, should have been, and then we apply that to the here and now. And and speaking from my own sense of anxiety, it's really easy for me to look back and say, well, if I would have just done this differently, if I would have just done that differently, then I wouldn't be in the position I am, or I wouldn't have to deal with the things that I'm dealing with right now. And that's one of the things that my therapist and I had to learn. I had to learn how to work around. And I don't know if this is a technique that your therapist has talked with you about, but we talked about what something she called was stop therapy. When the negative thoughts would come in, when negative emotions and things would come in, instead of looking at the negativity, telling yourself to stop and then finding something to be grateful for in that moment. It's easier said than done.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, doc, that's a really good plan. I'm sure that'll work out just great. The thing is, it does work, but getting your own mind to wrap around that is a challenge.
Yeah. He a lot of it's now been just focused on like trying to move out of the current mindset of being wrapped up in a relationship you're not in anymore, and get your mind past that first, and sleeping. Because like you said, that's part of it too, is you can recognize that there's 5-6 things wrong or things that you're struggling with, but you can't work on all 5 or 6 at the same time. So you have to, and that's something that I've come to the realization of, is like, you have to realize that like, I'm not going to be able to fix A, B, and C because I have to spend so much time fixing D and E that I'm just going to have to deal with A, B, and C, even though A, B, and C are gut-wrenchingly painful. Like, I know full well I need to deal with the fact that I can't get over her, and the fact that I have to get a higher paying job at some point, regardless of what I do with this new job, who needs an answer tomorrow, because they gave me the job offer a week and a half ago. And it's like, that's what happens now. Even when you get good opportunities and good things happen, when you have this much, when you're dealing with anxiety or things like that, you can't make jump decisions, even though you're like, oh, cool, new job offer. You're like, you have to sit and you have to think, and then you overthink. So like part of it too is like what he said is sometimes you just have to sit there for half an hour and in dead silence and just think. So like, that's what I'm going to be doing tonight after he goes to sleep. Before I try to unwind with something else, I'm just going to sit there, for half an hour and try to think.
Tim, I mean, from another person who deals with anxiety and is prescribed something for it along the same terms, is I've come to realize, and I told Mark, that the what if is the biggest question that we all ask ourselves when it comes to our anxiety and the way things are going on, especially when it comes to important decisions and important movements that we are currently dealing with. So
agreed. Yeah, absolutely. You're always, especially in this type of situation, you're going to heavily fight the what ifs and the maybes, and I always find that the what ifs are followed closely behind by the ugly step sibling called self-doubt, that maybe I'm not good enough for this, maybe I'm not able to handle this, maybe I'm not, and all that kind of comes, it seems for me anyway, that when I'm working through something that's causing me anxiety and and I have physical manifestations of my anxiety at times. And when that's happening, that's when my self-doubt starts coming in. Well, this wouldn't be happening if I wasn't so worried about this, or this, or if I was able to handle this, or this, and that's where that stop therapy for me was such a big deal, kind of a game changer in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's, again, there's no real way to know what's going on. And, and part of it is too, is like, you don't know when to try to erase the doubt to figuring out, other things. And that's also part of why, it's like I don't know what to do, because, you try to juggle through everything. How do you move forward when you're trying to figure out, like where, what is the best path on moving forward? Is it like, for me, is it going to Michigan to reset essentially my entire life? But of course, that's where all the, that's where the people are that she is, like that are doing things with my ex are in Michigan. So it's also like, even though full well, I'm never going to see this person, knowing that they're even remotely close to you. And that's part of why I hate being in this area right now. She's a 7-minute drive away. So 7 minutes away is my ex-wife, who literally could not care if I got ran over by a truck, because at the end of the day, the only thing that would be the concern would be, well, how do I explain that to Cameron? Not that I'm gone, but how do I explain that to him?
Right.
And
yeah, understandable.
So it's, do you go to Michigan to reset, and give up being in school? And I've had friends, and I've talked to Devon about it, like, well, I guess I could go to Milwaukee. I have a couple friends on there, that know, like, that are, that I have cosplay friends, people I could hang out with and stuff. But he's only about a year and a half away from starting school. And so once he starts school, if I'm anything out of a 30-minute drive away, there is no picking him up every 2 weeks, because he's too far away. He's too far away from school. I know anything out of 30 minutes, I'm not driving him to school every day. And so like I told Evan, that's literally what stuff has come down to, to try to move forward, is do I deal with everything that being here means, and just try to find a way to cope and try to find a better job in this area that I could be happy with, which is possible. That's part of it too, is you have to realize that each thing is possible where you're going to. That's something that I've been trying to tell myself to keep going, is that, okay, look, if staying in the area would suck, but you have a few friends at least, and eventually you would find a new job. Maybe it's not something you'll love, but you'll find something that would make more money. It's just, you have to deal with the fact that she's 7 minutes away, and she's probably months away from, like, bringing people over that you're going to run into. Or, like I said, or do you go to Michigan? In my story, completely reset and just give up seeing your own kid for 5-6 months at a time.
And that's part of the difficulty, I'm sure, especially because I know that you're, based on conversations we've had in the past, and for our audience listening, this isn't the first time I've interviewed Mark and Devon. They've both been on my show, Funny Science Fiction Podcast, and their episode's coming up here shortly. But I know that in other conversations that I've had with you, Mark, how close you are to your son, and how much he means to you, and all these other things. So I can understand why that adds anxiety to this decision for you, because not only is this a decision where you feel clearly it's going to impact your life, but it also impacts his. So there's a depth to this that's not just something that's on the surface. There's something more to this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Devon obviously can speak objectively. I like to think I'm a good parent. Obviously, every parent, I guess, would think that about themselves, or I guess at least you'd hope so. But that's honestly the biggest struggle, is, if he was like 6 or 7 or something, maybe it'd be like kind of like all right, you're already early on. You're already kind of getting obviously still very early in your life, but like, you're getting close to the point where you know what's going on. You have memories, blah, blah, blah. But, right now he's only 3.5. Me disappearing now could mean him growing up thinking that I didn't want to be around.
The hardest thing is that I see Mark, like the reason like we started our podcast, for instance, is one of the reasons is because of his son and growing our podcast to teach people the different fandoms that are out there and showing his son that, what we enjoy and bringing him into it and maybe seeing if he likes it too. And it's hard to see Mark have to deal with that type of issues and stuff. But at the same time, I do bring up to him when we have our talks about this new position is like, you'll have a little bit of time in Wisconsin to be with your kid for, as long, if you do take it, you'll have that time to kind of charge up some money with this new job, get, all the positive notes that you can come of it while still being able to be with Cameron along these next couple months because the move doesn't have to happen right away.
Okay, so there's a different play out there than possibility.
They've given me till end of October because that's when my lease is up here, and I said I couldn't move. I wouldn't be willing to move back sooner than then. Like I don't know when you're going back to the office, but I couldn't come back sooner than then. And they were like, okay, yeah, if that's what you're saying, that's fine. We'll make it work. And
well, that's awesome that they're willing to work with you on that.
It was a referral. Like I know 3 people at the company. Like one of them is one of my best friends, another guy named ironically Mark, who referred me on a whim. He was like, yeah, I think we maybe are opening up. He's like, let me just pass your resume on, like, if you don't mind. Like he kind of just did it randomly. Like there was no actual job posting. He just did it on a whim. And obviously here we are like a month later and they've offered it to me. So I know people at the company that are doing the same position that are, good friends, which of course makes it easier to transition if you're going to somewhere that you got people you're working with. But yeah, like Devin said, it's, I know I can acknowledge that, yeah, they give me till October. Part of the issue is, we'll talk about this off the air really quick, but there's obviously another major element that Devin knows that there's great concern that stuff could be used to prevent me from seeing him, even if it's during the times when I should.
Yeah, I get that. Okay. Yeah, we don't need to go into that now. So let's talk about how, because as each point with each interview that we do here, we talk about how we become focused on moving forward. So let's talk about, we've identified your issues. We know that these are very real and honest things that you're dealing with. So how have you started to help yourself to become focused on moving forward? We talked a little bit about therapy, but what are some of the other things that you're trying or applying to your life to help you?
Part of it is taking, and again, it's the struggle of when you do find something that you're willing to put time into, you try to think back to like, okay, how do I juggle this into like something, to move forward with, but also at the same time, like do it in a way that you can justifiably do it. And what I mean by that is like, I'm trying to do some random things, like obviously me and Devin are doing more with our podcast, or at least we're trying to do some new things with it. And, and then stuff like that. And then, I'm trying to start like a potential side social media business. Like I have one guy who I'm helping out right now, like go from nothing to like at least teach him and create some things for him. So like, it's, and it's, again, it's not much and it's not much money, and it's, but a lot of it's me learning how to do stuff like that for someone who's actually paying you to do it. As little as it might be. So part of it's that is trying to find, not hobbies. I want to say like proactive hobbies, because I'll always have hobbies, like comic book reading, which I'm 300
Right.
I'm 300 unread comics behind on, and I keep buying my pull list, but we all got our issues. But like read, like
fair enough.
like build kit, like stuff like, we all have our things that we have for hobbies. But what I mean by proactive hobbies is like things that could offer potential solutions down the road. Like, do I know if me doing social media for a few guys, and even if it's just a lot of me teaching them how to do things and advising them on how to do things, and maybe doing like basic video editing or basic audio editing, or maybe creating like basic logos as I'm learning to do things better with that. It's like, do I know if that's going to lead to anything? No, but it's taking a shot in the dark and just kind of trying to acknowledge like, well, this could help me get a job down the road, or this could open up a different door down the road now that I have, like, if having this side experience doing things. And so that's part of what I've been trying to do is, because like I said, hobbies are great, but I've learned there's a difference between a hobby, something that you just enjoy doing, or a proactive hobby, something that requires a little bit more work and forethought into it, but you have to do it in moderation. Like I have work that I could I could do right now for that client guy, or to come up with a business name, or to try to get a second client.
Right. Finding balance.
Yeah. But I know full well that the last day or two, I've had too much to think about. So I, put one thing on the back burner to put this in the forefront. And also part of it too is knowing when to think about stuff, like they gave me the job offer and I realized before I could think about, what I wanted to do, I wanted to act like I was going to be able to take him with me to Michigan. So that's how I acted for like a week was, let's assume I get to take him and let's plan all that out. But then you got to, like I said, for people listening, you got to be careful with it, because it's when you're dealing with major anxiety issues and depression and all that, you can somehow trick yourself into thinking that the thing that you're doing to get your mind off of having to make a decision, because again, I didn't want to get myself into the situation that I had before, where I got so much advice and was so anxiety ridden about what to do that I thought about nothing else. I didn't let my brain reset at all. So you can argue this time I did the opposite. I let my brain reset too much. I didn't think about it enough, because like I said, it's tomorrow, that I have to give some sort of indication on what I'm doing. And so part of it too is I have to learn when I am learning is to, yes, it's okay to think about what could be, but you also have to remind you have to like somehow not trick yourself, and to acknowledge what's realistic. Like I knew full well in my head that I'm never going to be able to take him, that the odds are like 2% that I get to take him. But you get so wrapped up in like wanting something good to happen that you take that 2% and go, I'm going to make that my reality, which is great. Because a lot of people will give you advice like, act like you're going to get the thing you want, which is great advice, but you have to dial it back at a certain point.
But that can also be dangerous if you're not set firmly in reality while working towards the thing that you want. You have to work towards what you want, but you have to have your feet on the ground when doing it, and therein lies the danger.
Right. And and then again, all of this, like for everyone listening who's like, man, how long has it been since you've been dealing with all this? Like, just to give everyone a time frame, and Tim yourself, of like, okay, well that's a lot to deal with. Like, how long has it been? It's been 4 months. This has been the last 4 months. It's only been
very
4
fresh.
Months. Yeah. I've been having to make these decisions since essentially late September, and late September is when I was gotten rid of. Mid-October is when I was replaced.
Yeah, that's a very quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been and part of it too is with the reason why that first job is I over panicked and started applying for every job I could, and didn't probably think about it. And so I'm doing better now in the sense that, and like Devon knows, like, yes, I broke down twice today and I'm having anxiety going on right now, but I'm sleeping this time. I'm able to get myself at least 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm thinking about the things I need to think about properly. Before when all this happened, if this exact same scenario had happened again, which it did, a couple months ago, I already proven I wasn't in the situation where I could have calmly called daycares and tried to figure out pricing. Like I wouldn't have been able to sit and get a plan in place that if I took him with me, where would everything happen? And this time, like, yeah, it doesn't, I don't get to, but if I was able to take him with me, I had I did 2 virtual daycares. I got pricing on 3 daycares. Like I had open slots that I could have paid to reserve a spot for October. I found 3 different cities I could probably afford an apartment in,
Right.
like,
So you were establishing a plan in place.
yeah.
Excellent.
So now it's just the issue. And again, it's you try to juggle, it's like I said, without repeating myself too many times. It's that weird juggle, you have to, and that's something I'm still figuring out. And like I said, but you also have to acknowledge, if you have to turn down opportunities for a little while because you have to get your mind right, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely not. No.
That's for people listening. That's what I've been trying to tell myself. If I email this guy tomorrow and go, hey, I'd like to take it, but I need a higher offer, and they can't do it, and I have to turn it down because I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. If I acknowledge that, like, hey, you're getting there, you're getting to the spot where you could get your life in order, but you're not there yet. There's nothing I can do. I have to acknowledge that it's okay to wait another couple months to then do a different opportunity or something.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you this. We're getting close to the end of our hour here, but let me ask you this. These are questions that I ask every single guest that has been on Focused on Forward. So going through this, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned?
I would say biggest lesson is that it's okay to have a day where you make no progress.
Okay, that's a good lesson. It's a hard lesson to accept, but that's a very good lesson, especially when you're dealing with anxiety. You are I call them my neutral days because I think of a car. A car essentially has 2 directions, forward and reverse. But there are some days where I feel like I just, today I like to call them neutral days. I'm not getting much done, but the engine's still running. So, okay, excellent. And now the second question I ask every guest, which is similar to the first one, what is the greatest piece of advice that you've been given?
That one's gonna be a little bit harder because like I said, I got advice from too many people. In terms of greatest piece of advice,
and it doesn't have to necessarily be about this situation. It could be from a high school basketball coach or softball coach or baseball coach or soccer, whatever. Somebody in your life at some point that said, hey kid, do this, or this, and you went, oh man, that's a game changer. So it could be any number of things.
It was something that I wish I had taken. Okay, so now it does bring a story to mind that I wish I had. Obviously you think retroactively. It was a professor in college, who, like, it was like a law class, and I got like a decent grade, but like, and he sat me down one day, and I was in his office, and I was talking. He goes, Mark, I'm going to be very blunt with you right now, right? And he was like overly blunt. Like, I was like, okay, like to the point where like it was like professors aren't supposed to say this kind of thing. And he was like, you're a smart guy. He goes, you're a really smart guy. He goes, that's your problem though. He goes, you're not like I'm a genius or anything. I'm not, but he goes, you're overly intelligent to where when things seem like it might require like a little bit of extra studying or a little bit of this or a little bit of that. He goes, you get bored and you don't bring yourself to focus on it because you're so smart when it comes to other things that when you struggle with something, you tone it off. You don't try as much as you should. And I acknowledge at the time that was really good advice, but never took it to heart. And to me now looking back, it's like, it's true. You can be, you can not prepare yourself properly.
Okay, excellent. All right, so now we referenced this in the beginning, but we mentioned that there's a podcast that you guys are both part of. It's been referenced a little bit each of the part of the show here, and since Mark, you've done clearly the primarily part of the talking, we're going to let your vocal pipes rest a moment. We're going to put this on Devon. So Devon, tell us about the Fandom Effect, where people can find it, and what you guys talk about there.
Well, this is the best part, Tim, is that Mark will actually chime in and end up yelling at me after a little while, but
Oh, I know, and that's why I let it in that way. So,
well, we're called the Fandom Effect. We are found on every big broadcasting platform except for Amazon for some reason. When Jeff Bezos decided to step down, he took our podcast with him.
It's true.
So we can know we're not able to broadcast on there. But we are found every Friday, and we are found on Scene Snobs every Sunday as well at 8 o'clock. We have a Patreon set up for us as well, just to give us some help. It's Phantom Effect Podcast. We also have Facebook, Twitter. Mark's on Instagram under Instagram/Bushido Geek. There's a period after Bushido as well. And then Mark also likes to stream on Twitch under the same phrase, except no period.
Yep.
So we like to get on there, talk about different fandoms. Tim, you're aware we have had tons of, I'm gonna straight up say it, nerd talk about everything and anything, and that's our biggest thing. Is our gift to the world is being able to let people know that they're not alone in this world. There's plenty of other fans out there of the same things that they like.
that's right, letting the geek flag fly.
Exactly.
So
it's important to do.
Yeah, absolutely. The little bit of solidarity, inclusion with other people, I think, is always good. Help people know that it's way cooler to be a geek now than it ever was when I was a kid. Oh, you like Star Wars? You like that's dumb. Why would you watch Star Wars? Why would you? We were always, people at my school always kind of looked at us as the odd ones out because we were, watching that stuff, or I would like to read comic books and stuff when I was a kid. But okay, cool. And I think we talked about this. I'm pretty positive we talked about this on Funny Science Fiction. But let everybody know who your most recent interview was and what you kind of talked about with them on there. So kind of give them a flavor for what your show's about. Devon did a pretty nice, good introduction there, but we'll have you tell a little bit more.
Yeah. So I mean, the very last one we did, like yesterday, was with a gentleman by the name of Rob Hockman, who did part of our episode with us when we interviewed Sonny Ono, who was last week. Who he was the main liaison between WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling back in the heyday, and Rob Hockman was like those guys were like partners. And Rob Hockman's a guy who worked with like Crime Time in WWE. And like he also did some stuff with Super Bowl with the New York Giants. He showed us like a Super Bowl ring last night, but he's done a lot of work. They're currently him and Sonny Ono are the two English announcers for Pro Wrestling Noah. So if you watch Pro Wrestling Noah, the English side of it, the two guys announcing it are the two guys that we just talked to.
Oh, that's cool.
In the last week or two. I haven't watched Pro Wrestling Noah, but from what I've heard, it's pretty good stuff. And then before that, we interviewed Jay Lethal, who's the current Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion and former World Champion, Pure Champion. I mean, he's held every title in that company. But not just wrestling, but we've interviewed Funimation voice actors, people who do comic books, indie comic books, video games, all that kind of stuff.
Lots of random people, but are fun.
All right, cool. Well, I encourage everybody to go out and take a listen to it. I am actually a subscriber of theirs on Apple iTunes and Apple Podcasts, and it's a fun show to listen to. You will fully get your nerd on while listening to these guys. It's a good fun show, and they kind of cross everything. They talk about video games, they talk about comic books, they talk about pro wrestling, clearly, and all the nerd genres in between. So it's not just one fandom they cover everything. So Mark, Devon, thank you so much for being here today on Focused on Forward. It was great to have you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing us on. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's going to conclude us today for Focused on Forward. Well, that concludes another episode of Focused on Forward. To be a guest of Focused on Forward, you can reach us through Twitter @PodcastFOF, through our Facebook page named Focused on Forward, or through email, focusedonforward@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing each and every one of your stories that has yet to be told. So until then, be safe, be kind, and be loving to one another as you stay focused on forward.